All right, let's get started.
We've already gone through our introduction. We're going to be talking about what gear you need to bring with you, what steps you should take before solo hiking, what skills you should have, general tips once you go. And we also have some questions that we've sourced from previous marketing and what people would like to hear about for solo hiking. So let's go ahead and kick this off. So a little bit about me. So if you haven't heard before, or if it's your first time joining and don't know much about how we started, we usually like to tell that in the very beginning. So I was the person who was overweight on the left, and after losing 80 pounds through hiking, I decided I wanted to just push myself further. That's been about 18 years, 20 years, depending on how you count it, because it took me about 2 years to lose those 80 pounds and basically changed my life through the outdoors. And with that, that's part of the reason how we started the 52 Hike Challenge. So let me go ahead and hand it over to Karla to talk about her story.
Yeah, so I myself was going through a really difficult time. I was actually going through a divorce, and I just found myself in this huge depression. About a year later, I met Philip, and Philip's story really inspired me. And I decided to go on a hike a week. It was, completely unplanned. We had no idea I had no idea what would come from this journey. And so what happened was it was such a transformative journey to be outdoors weekly. And after I completed the 52 Hike Challenge, I had a lot of internal growth, and I wanted to prove to myself that I was getting outdoors for myself. And a part of that for me was actually taking this solo trip where I went to Utah and I went to Wyoming, and it was super incredible. I'll actually share a couple of photos. It was very empowering. I did this trip on my own, and I also did some courses so that I could climb the Grand Teton. I hired a company, I took a lot of classes, but the trip I did on my own. So I was forced to camp by myself. I was forced to learn, everything I needed to know so that I could do this not only feeling confident, but that I could do it for myself. And it was really empowering. And one of the things that, as we've been running this movement, a lot of people ask is, how do I hike solo? How do I even do that? And so let's just start off by saying we prefer you guys go with family and friends and people, just from the safety perspective. And it can be safe to hike on your own as well, but it's always best to go with people. But if you want to go solo, then we're presenting this for you today so that you have the tools and the education to go out there. So let's get started by talking about, like, how do I get out there, right? The first thing, and we always talk about this in all of our hiking 101 classes, is make sure to carry the 10 essentials with you, especially if you're going out on your own. For those of you on Instagram, we do have a slide with the 10 essentials on it. So feel free to head on over to facebook.com and check us out there, where you can see the slides as we go through these. But the 10 essentials are the 10 things you need to carry with you. And if there was an emergency where you had to stay overnight, these 10 items will save your life. The 10 essentials include navigation, which is map and compass, which we're going to talk a lot more about in a couple of slides. The sun protection, like hat, sunblock, sunglasses, insulation, which is your extra clothing. I've gone on trails many times and see people carrying very little, and you always need to carry a jacket, especially bring a rain jacket, because you never know what's going to happen in terms of the weather. You want to bring your illumination, which is your headlamp, your first aid supplies, your fire in case of an emergency. And please remember, we are in fire season. Do not light a fire unless it's absolutely necessary. So this would be in case of a emergency situation. And then also knowing how to start a fire and putting it out safely, super important. Bringing your repair kit and tools, your nutrition, your hydration, which is your water. We're going to talk about how much water to bring, bringing plenty of snacks. having some sort of emergency shelter. So it could be as simple as a emergency blanket, so that if you did have to sleep outside, you can stay out there and not freeze. Really important to always carry the 10 essentials, especially if you're going on your own. So this is going to be a quick recap of some things we've already taught, but really important if you're going to be going outdoors solo. So let's talk about first aid a little more in depth. Again, if you're going solo, you need to know how to take care of yourself. One of the most important things, like if you need a break, take a break. Make sure you drink plenty of water so you stay hydrated. One of the things I recently heard from a person who goes out and does rescues was the #1 cause for rescues is actually dehydration. So people go out, they don't have enough water. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. But know what you need to know in regards to taking care of yourself on the trails. If you encounter something like, for example, blisters, how do you care for a blister? I know how to do it because, you know, when I went out and did the JMT, I had to understand how to care for those blisters, right? And so things like that, and having your Band-Aids, having medication for headaches, for, you know, little aches and pains and things of that sort, your scissors, tweezers, how do you remove a tick, right? So these are all things that you are going to need to be self-sufficient with and educate yourself on, especially if you're going to go out hiking. We had a situation on the trails where a tick actually, I had a tick on me, and thankfully Philip was able to help me get it out, but it was not fun. We did know how to remove it. Thankfully it was intact and we didn't have any issues. But it's so important, again, to understand how do we treat these conditions when we're out on the trails. So do not forget to have a good emergency and first aid kit with you.
All right, so we're going to talk about clothing here. And the main thing is to dress in layers, as well as understanding the right materials that you need to bring with you. So going from left to right, we can see that we have a rain jacket. You definitely want to have a jacket that's going to be breathable, something that's going to allow the sweat to go through. And there are several different brands and companies that provide that kind of gear. The one that we're showing here is North Face. You can find a lot of these different brands at a retailer like REI. I really like to have some of these items that have either a Gore-Tex so that it breathes through it. They have some other brands out there, again, that allow that perspiration to go through. Also having pit zips is really nice. Something that you can open up your pits and unzip and allow a lot more free flow to come through. The pants that are featured here, usually it's a polyester. Wool is also another one. You don't want to have cotton. Of all your clothing items, you really don't want cotton, especially your underwear and your socks. And the reason why is because cotton will retain moisture. And with moisture, you're going to have rubbing, chafing. It's also very possible for you to get hypothermic in those areas if you're in a very cold situation. So cotton socks are bad because they'll create blisters, and we don't want that. So the socks that are shown here, again, this is a like a smart, that might be like a smart wool or like a wool kind of blend, and they have them where they're not itchy wool materials. That one in particular is from REI. Shirts. Shirt that I'm wearing, for example, is one that also allows for the moisture to get through. It's also one of these shirts would have like an SPF rating, like a SPF 30 or 50. Those are great. And again, a lot of these shirts will have the ability to be rolled up so that you can actually cool off, or they have like a mesh underneath the underarm, so that way it can breathe a lot better. And the best way to do things is to layer. So we see this photo with a gentleman with a base layer, a mid layer, and an outer layer. And generally speaking, you wouldn't really hike with a down jacket. Maybe if it's very cold and you're going slowly, but like a down jacket probably wouldn't allow the moisture to wick through as much as some of the other technical layers underneath there.
So some additional things that you're gonna, want to make sure that you have with you on your solo hikes include like a really great pack that can fit all of your things we talked about earlier, your 10 essentials, your layers, and then also a way to carry your water, right? And you also want to carry what we talked about earlier, which was like your Technu or your water filter, things of that sort. In addition, we're not going to do, this is not a, all-inclusive hiking course today, but we are going to remind you to have good traction on your shoes, most importantly, because a lot of times when you don't have good traction, that's what causes you to slip, etc. And then, yeah, trekking poles. I love bringing them, and not only, especially as a solo hiker, I'm going to talk a little bit more about why trekking poles are really important, especially solo hiking, in a few slides.
All right, so we really would like you to understand that there are different skills out there. And so understanding how to use a map and compass is really important. I wish that we can actually talk about this in this time frame, but we really can't. There's actually a course, and I put a screenshot about REI having some classes. These are definitely some classes in different areas. So I know that we're broadcasting nationwide. You'll have to go to REI's page to actually learn a little bit more about some of those different sessions that they have available. There's also a book by the Mountaineers, and the Mountaineers is a great publication. They have a wilderness navigation book. You can take a look at there and, brush up against it. The idea is to not rely on electronic devices. Electronic devices could fall out of your hands, break, the window breaks, something happens, and you've lost your map that's on your phone. So you really should understand how to use a map and compass, and also bring a map if you're going to go out there and be safe.
I want to add a few little comments to this. I've taken these map and compass classes as well, not only through REI, but Sierra Club. And there's just so much to learn. And like Philip said earlier, like one of the top things you should always do before you head out on trail is grab a map, an actual printed map, and put it in a bag, like a Ziploc bag, and make sure you know what trail you're going on and that you study that map. And you have it in that bag in case of an emergency. Like Philip said, your phone could fall out of your hands, or it could break. I mean, we've heard stories like this. So having those backup tools when you're going outdoors is so important, and knowing how to use them before you set foot on trail. So please spend some time educating yourself on navigating.
Yeah, and they also have waterproof paper as well, so you can print that out, or you can go ahead and pick up one of those maps again at REI or some other store. But I wanted to let you know that it is safe to have those. And of course, tell someone where you're going. We'll get to that later. So let's talk about some of the electronic items. So here's another pro tip. Make sure you have a battery pack and the cords too, because these batteries do die on GPS units. AllTrails is a pretty good program where you can download that on your phone. And again, I'd really recommend the Pro version, where you can download the maps. If you don't have the Pro version, you have the free version, you can't access those maps once you lose cellular connection, which is a really bad situation. And of course, you want to download those maps before you leave to go on the trail. So make sure that all your GPS units and all your digital maps are downloaded before you even head out and lose cell phone reception. It's just a quick mention regarding AllTrails. We also have a special promo. Whenever you purchase like a medal from us, you also save 33%. So some of the other items out there that we like, and we'd also recommend if you're going out solo. I personally have the Garmin Fenix 5X. I know there's a newer model out there, but it already has preloaded maps on there. and you can check those out. You can plug it into your computer and you can actually download GPX files on there. The Garmin InReach is a device, as well as the Spot, as well as a device that you have to pay a subscription model for, and that allows you to connect to a satellite. So you're able to send a message out to someone about where you are. They can track you. It's safe to do that. And depending on the package that you purchase, you can also send messages to some people. So there's also another Spot device that where it just sends your location. It doesn't really allow you to make contact or receive communication, like two-way communication.
So let's talk a little bit about, okay, we kind of gave you the rundown of some basics before you even think about solo hiking. But let's say you're ready, you're like, okay, I've got the gear, I know how to navigate, I'm ready to try the solo hiking thing. So as we said, first and foremost, start going outdoors with your family and friends before you try going on your own. But once you've done all of those baby steps that we talked about, we highly recommend that you go to your local parks. For example, we have parks near us like Laguna Canyon, which has an actual ranger station, and you can go to the Nix Nature Center and you can grab a map from them. You can talk to a ranger. So that is a really great way to get started, going during their opening hours so that you have the support there with the rangers and they can give you like information on the trails. Super great way to get started. So those are your local and regional and state parks. And then also going to trails that are well maintained, that are well marked, are really great ways to ensure that you're not going to get lost. So people tend to get lost more when they start doing things like off trail and such. So really important. And then, making sure that before you set out, you spend some time planning your hike. Okay, this is where we've just talked about, like, sometimes it's not that easy to sit there and to think about, like, where am I going this weekend? But it's something that is super important and something we're going to talk about in some of the later series that we're going to be having for the rest of the year. So plan ahead, right? Like, maybe it's Monday and you're going to get out on the weekend. Sit there and do your research. And then a part of that research is, what flora and fauna am I going to come across when I'm hiking in this area? That's going to ensure your own, not only safety, but preparation. So for example, where we live, there are, animals like tons of rattlesnakes, and there's coyotes and stuff like that. So before I went out on trail, I would need to go to the website of my local park and see and find out, what kind of animals am I going to encounter? And then what do I do when I encounter them? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in future slides as well today. But also knowing, like, am I going to come across poison oak? And that's why you would want to have something like your Tecnu with you in your pack. So really understanding is a part of that planning. Making sure to start small, like try not to go more than 3 miles when it's your first time going solo, because what if you don't like it? Then easy, you can come back to your car in 1.5 miles or whatever, right? So you really need to get comfortable with getting outdoors and then testing it out and see how you do. Really important. Start going often. The more you get out on trail, the more you're going to get in tune with not only your own instincts, but how you're feeling when you're out there. And then important, like really understanding your limits. We definitely want you to be safe when you're outdoors. And one of the biggest things that we do sometimes is we don't listen to our own intuition. So if something doesn't feel right, be comfortable with turning around. The trail and the summits are always going to be there. So the most important thing is to be safe. If you encounter some sort of condition that you're not comfortable with, for example, snow, it's okay to turn around. And we also recommend not doing snow hikes until you've taken the proper classes and things of that sort. But most importantly, I think one of the things that for myself as a female solo hiker, because I do go on my own and sometimes Philip does runs and I'll hike. So one of the most important things that have gotten me to this point is building the confidence. So 52 hikes is really a great way to get confident being outside weekly. being comfortable with different things that you may encounter on the trail. But doing this on a consistent basis is what's going to help you to be confident outdoors. All right, so now we should talk a little bit about some of the skills. First and foremost, know how to use your gear. So how do we do this, right? When you have your gear, like, use it at home, test it out, go on test hikes. Don't break in shoes on a 10-mile hike, okay? Like, break them in little by little, right? Go on 2 and 3 mile hikes, see how they feel, you know, make adjustments and so forth. And then that includes things like your GPS unit. Like, don't wait until the last minute. Like, make sure that you're prepping ahead, way ahead of time with your gear and things of that sort. Really, really important if you're thinking about solo hiking, get really comfortable with understanding the weather. So that includes when you're doing your research, looking at the weather for that weekend. And then not only are you doing it the weekend before, but you're going to be doing this the night prior. You want to make sure that you understand the weather so you can plan accordingly, prepare accordingly, and bring the right gear for that weather, including clothing. And then we talked about hydration earlier. So you absolutely want to bring at least, well, let's talk about different conditions. My understanding from what the rangers I've spoken to, they say bring at least 1 liter for every 3 miles in a regular conditions, nice weather, ideal hiking conditions. If it's hotter outside, you're absolutely going to want to bring more water. So the usual, we have a photo here that's included in our slide. For anyone on Instagram, please join us on Facebook where we have our slides. But the average is 16 ounces for each hour, especially when it's hot. And that will help to decrease any chances of getting heat, dehydration, heat cramps, etc. So we talked a lot about map and compass a little while ago, but really, really important to get educated, especially if you're going to go solo. You're going to encounter so many different things and you want to be prepared. The last thing you want is to be out there and to not know what to do. So some different classes include like the map and compass class, which we talked about, understanding leave no trace. And actually, Leave No Trace has so many cool resources on their website. And especially if you're going to be a hiker that's going to be consistently going outdoors, we highly recommend that you not only practice Leave No Trace, but you really understand why Leave No Trace is so important. They have a free course you can take. There's also wilderness first aid. So like I talked about earlier, like knowing what to do in case of a blister situation, or, I mean, there's so many other things that could potentially happen. So take some classes, and you can take classes, you know, at REI. I've, for example, taken a course with the Sierra Club. The Mountaineers have courses, and there's representatives at your local retailer that you can also ask for the proper maps in addition to other classes and resources.
All right, let's talk about some general tips. So as you go on the trail, make sure that you're comfortable, okay? And we recommend going on a more popular trail because let's be honest, if you're gonna go out solo hiking, you're gonna feel a lot more comfortable knowing that someone else could get help if you need help, or you can ask, make sure that you're going the right direction. You really want to get more familiar and comfortable with the trails before just going out solo. And so that's the first one. We also recommend to avoid snow. And the reason why is because a lot of reasons, but basically snow, you lose some traction, you can slip, you can fall, you can hurt yourself. And when you're solo and you hurt yourself, I mean, that quarter mile or just even a couple hundred feet or even thousands of feet just seems extremely daunting, especially if you have a sprained ankle or hurt leg. So going with that flow, that leads us to our next point about not doing any technical climbs alone. I don't go alone when I do anything technical. And it's just really a bad idea because there's the risk factor goes up with that. So as I mentioned before about the GPS units, anytime you go out there with any electronic item, you want to bring a backup power bank and charging cords. I've used a solar panel before, and I'm not sure if it was the cloud situation or what, but it just wasn't charging my devices the way I was looking for. And so that's why I also recommend a power bank at this point. So understanding the conditions is really important. You can go on to some Facebook groups and ask if anybody's done the trail recently. I use Instagram to also look up the peak or whatever we're doing, and I'll type in like a hashtag, and I'll kind of look at the weather, look at the photos, and kind of assess the weather situation from some people who have recently posted some photos in that area. You can also go on to REI. They have a webpage where it's called REI Conversations, and you can ask people again about the trail conditions. I think it's really important that you understand the trail conditions before getting out there and just going. Okay, so once you go, we actually have this handy dandy form that you can download on our website, and you can print it off and fill it out. And it's under our resources tracking. And it's basically letting people know where you're going and when you'll be back. And that's really important to let people know. If there's ever a situation that you would want to have the person who cares about you to call the park rangers in case of any emergency. And but you should also have those phone numbers saved in your contact list in case you have an emergency as you're going out solo. And of course, in case you happen to have cell phone reception, you can reach them. So you can ask them ahead of time about the trail conditions, but basically it's always good to have that number, and just in case of any emergencies. Of course, checking the weather. One of the websites I like is Mountain Forecast, but you can find several other weather stations out there to really understand the weather conditions. And you want to pack accordingly to make sure that you bring, I like to bring a couple extra layers just because, you know, like let's say, for example, if it's not going to be freezing cold, I like to still bring an extra jacket and maybe even some gloves, because if it does become cold, or if I happen to be out a lot later than I expect and I have to come out at night, I want to have those items with me. So those are some things that you need to be prepared to handle when you're going out solo. Again, it's all on you. So during the hike, of course, you want to stay on the trail. We like to have a set time where we turn around, and usually that's somewhere around 2 o'clock. Gives you enough time to get out with daylight, and especially in the mountains, 2 o'clock is a really critical time, especially if you're doing anything where there's snow and it's going to melt, and it could actually, like rocks could fall. So that could be another dangerous situation. But 2 o'clock is a pretty good time that you need to turn around by. It's also really important that you look around you every quarter mile, just see what the terrain looks like. Because when you're going forward, it looks a lot different from when you're going backwards, or you're going on the same trail back. And I think that this is really important to still do, even when you're doing a loop, because there's a possibility that you could decide that you don't want to continue doing the loop and you want to turn back around. And if you come and as you go, there are many trails where there are forks in the road, and you know, you might come back and say, wait, now was it a right and then a left, or was it a left and a right? I'm not quite sure. So it's good to look back, especially at every junction, and just kind of assess the situation. Again, getting to know your surroundings as well. Okay, so here we're going to talk about some questions that some of you had in the audience. We have some questions that were already pre-asked, but we'll also be answering some other questions as we go along. Okay, so bears, snakes, and mosquitoes. Okay, how to stay safe from insects, bears, snakes, moose, all that stuff. Okay, that was asked by Alan Saja. Hopefully I said your name right. So attacks are very rare. So according to, if you're going to Yosemite, which is an extremely popular park, no one has been killed or seriously injured by a black bear in Yosemite. Okay, so that's a really nice, safe, statistic to know, given that they have thousands of people showing up there every year. Rattlesnakes, they really don't want to eat you. Okay. It's nothing like a horror movie. It's not going to come out and like take a chunk of you. They swallow their prey whole, and there aren't too many rattlesnakes out there that are going to be able to swallow a human. They're really trying to protect themselves, especially with the rattle. They want to signal you and let you know, hey, go away. Usually you leave them alone. They will slither off. They don't come and just attack. Okay, they don't want to do that. With that, there's a statistic out there. About 10 to 15 people do die a year. So obviously, don't touch them. Don't try to get near them. If you do happen to get bit, obviously you want to get out and call for help. Okay. So you can also find a little bit more about some of the different wildlife. We're going to talk a little bit more about it, but I just wanted to point you to a resource right now. On our webpage, you can actually click the little search bar and look up animals, and you'll find a lot of different blogs. One of them that we have here is a blog in hiking, safety, injuries, illness, animal encounters, all that stuff. And so we have a blog article, and in that blog article, we also link to some expert advice on REI. And I put a little screen capture there from it says wildlife safety tips, and it kind of details for each of those animals and what to do. So we'll give you a little bit of a preview about what to do here.
So we were on the National Park Service, and we wanted to just quickly touch on, for example, bears. And they actually have a good write-up on what to do depending on what kind of a bear you might be encountering. So remember what I said earlier, especially if you're going to go hiking, you need to sit down and plan out where you're going, what kind of animals you may encounter, and then do your due diligence. Understand, if I come across this animal, what am I going to do? I'm actually going to share two personal stories about this. Last weekend, I was hiking at my local trail, and I passed a rut, and I turned back, and there was a massive snake, and it was a rattler. And I had to take a moment and just take a deep breath. Thankfully, it was the tail end of it. It was really big though, and I did get scared, but I know I've seen them many times actually. And most of the time, they just want to slither away. They want to have nothing to do with us. So give it its space first and foremost. Most importantly, don't go near it. Don't start messing with it. Just leave it alone. Sometimes we have had to turn around because we've also encountered snakes on the trails. So know what kind of snakes you might encounter. Some of them are harmless. Okay. So on the JMT, I had a bear encounter, and it was right behind my tent. And what I did is I grabbed my trekking poles and I basically shooed it away, made myself bigger. I knew what to do in that situation. Now, if you're going to be in an area like, for example, Montana, where you're at Yellowstone and or the Grand Tetons, and there's grizzlies, we've carried bear spray with us, and we also know, hey, what do I do in this situation, right? So we went onto the mps.gov website, and we knew what to do in case of an encounter. So there are so many different animals that you can encounter out on the trails. We can't sit here and tell you exactly what to do for each animal, but please know that there's tons of resources written by experts that will help you in case of that situation. So really important to do your due diligence before. So Rescue Man Tim said, what should a solo hiker carry for protection from an animal? So yeah, again, we briefly talked about having bear spray or having your trekking poles. A lot of times with most animals, you need to make yourself look bigger. Hopefully that will scare the animal away. And I know that, there was a question about cougar encounters. Again, if you make yourself look big, most of the time they're going to go away. They really don't want to have anything to do with you. What I read in the nps.gov website was if they start coming close to you, now you need to start throwing things at that animal. We're talking in specifics to like encountering a mountain lion in this situation. But you can do your due diligence as you continue your journey in the outdoors and understanding what wildlife you may come across. All right, so let's talk a little bit about bugs on the trails. Yes, I know you've encountered a lot of different animals, insects on the trail. So one of the best things you can do to protect yourself is to have your bug spray or a bug net. For example, again, going back to the story about the John Muir Trail, there were times where the mosquitoes were like really, really heavy in certain areas. So we would put our net on to protect ourselves. And also these products can help with things like ticks, chiggers, etc. So knowing that there's different tools you can use is really important, and you may want to carry that, and also understanding not only where you're going to be headed, but what time of the year it is. So I know that it's high season for bugs in the summertime, especially here in the Sierra Mountain Range. So that would be a good time to make sure you pack all of these items. You can also like use picaridin, and there's a spray that Sawyer does for your clothing that allows you to spray it, and then you can spray your tent, you can spray your backpack, you let it air dry, and then that will protect you against bugs for about, like, I believe it's 2 to 3 maybe different washes that it can go through, and then then you'll need to reapply the spray that you use.
All right, so I'll chime in here a little bit. So one of the questions someone asked, as a female, I'm told I shouldn't because it's unsafe, but is it? What steps can I take to be safe alone? And that was by Safe Code Grizzly. Okay, so we have some statistics we looked into, and this is according to backpacker.com. You can see our source and reference on the bottom. But you'll notice that it's you have aggravated assault, and that is a really big number in the city, okay? You cannot actually see how big it is or how small it is in the national parks. Believe it or not, there's the 0.03 right there is indicating how small it is over in the national parks, okay? Rape, murder, manslaughter, very small numbers. A lot of the stuff is seen on movies. I don't want to, at the same time, I don't want to dismiss it, but your chances of this occurring is far greater in the city. And I think that this is a lot of Hollywood that's kind of scared a lot of people. So another question here, I hike solo quite often, and a question I get asked a lot is, how do I not get scared? I do get scared, but it's all about learning to manage your fears and having tools to make it easier. Okay, and also, so knowing, of course, having some self-defense is important. Feeling more comfortable about your surroundings. Again, if you're going somewhere that's a little bit more popular, you can still have a very nice solo journey yourself. Solo doesn't necessarily mean that it's no one is around, okay? And so you could still enjoy the nature by yourself and have your own thoughts, have your own, journaling and all that stuff that you're gonna go about there. So I think understanding the statistics will help a little bit with the fears. Understanding what to do when you encounter some of those animals on the trail will also mitigate some of those fears. And of course, maybe knowing some self-defense as well will help mitigate some of those fears as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to take a few moments. Like I mentioned earlier in the talk, I went on this not only solo trip that was completely life-changing and empowering, and I've actually traveled a lot on my own. I've traveled to places like India, and I hike alone a lot. And the thing that has helped me the most has been building my own self-confidence and trust, not only within myself, but just humanity. Like, believe it or not, most people are inherently good. So, you know, taking the time, the more you ground yourself, the more you keep practicing mindfulness, the more you become trusting of, you know, that most of the time, most of the hikers I encounter on the trails are really nice. And I'm not going to say that I haven't ever had moments where I haven't had fear come up for me, because I would be lying. But I know that a lot of times I just take a deep breath. And then if I need to turn around, I'll turn around. And a lot of times too, you know, you can always, if you go hiking on your own and at some point you're feeling uncomfortable, when we did the JMT, we came across a lot of women who were hiking on their own, and they said, hey, can I join your group? So don't feel uncomfortable asking another group or another person, like, hey, do you mind if I tag along? It's all a practice, and you have to do what's best for you. Feeling good about yourself when you're outside is super, super important. So just taking those baby steps and asking for what you need. So I wanted to end the chat with this quote that I found online. And it said, if you're always worried about the unknown, you would never experience the greatness out there. If you go out prepared and you know where you're going, you've done everything that you can. This was by Aaron Wired Saver, who we found this quote and we just loved it. And so, you know, we just want to encourage you to take baby steps. Know you're not alone. We've done it. Lots of the people in our community have done it, and you know that we've got your back. So hopefully we actually hopefully we have plenty of information and given you plenty of information. If you have any additional messages for us or any comments, please go ahead and post them now, and we will just take a few more moments. So let's see what we have so far. We have.
So I see in the chat, someone mentioned about joining the Solo Female Travelers group on Facebook or Instagram. Sounds like a great group to join. So I would definitely check that out. And I'm sure there's other similar groups as well. Let's see. We have some other questions here about what about when you have a dog with you? So there are certain times where dogs are allowed on the trail, and there are certain times where they're not. And usually when you're trying to preserve the land management or rangers will let everyone know when it's allowed or not. Basically, dogs will bark and scare away some of the wildlife. And if you're going into an area where they don't want that to happen, they will tell you no dogs allowed. Okay, so definitely check up and make sure that the trail that you're going on is appropriate for dogs. I know that some people may feel more comfortable. Again, this is when you're first going out solo hiking. Maybe you might want to choose a trail that does allow dogs, and that way you can bring your dog, and that could be another protection device. Okay. All right, so let's see.
We talked a little bit about what should be in a repair kit is the next question. So definitely want to have tape for sure. There's different kinds of tape that you could use from, there's one called Luca tape, which was great for us on the JMT for blisters and helped to keep the bandage intact. To duct tape, which could help for different things you might encounter. So absolutely need to have some tape. Something that a little tip is you can take some duct tape and you can wrap it around your trekking poles so that if you do need to use it, you can just easily pull it off there. In addition to a multi-tool is usually good enough, you know, just something that has you know, scissors, and maybe like if you need a little knife to cut some things. I usually also have a small little knife that was given to me as a gift that I brought on the trails along with a multi-tool. So those are just some really good right off the bat items to include in your tools kit. So Let's see, someone asked about trekking poles. Amanda said, I may have missed it, but did you discuss the benefits of trekking poles? As we mentioned earlier, we are doing more of a condensed, quick edition on how to get ready to solo hike. But regarding trekking poles, there's a lot that we could say about trekking poles. They definitely help save your knees. They help with balancing. There's been many times where I've been on trail and had it not been for my trekking poles, I would have slipped. So they've saved me a lot of times. But, you know, there's different people that have different opinions on trekking poles, and I've heard things from, you know, they help save your knees to, you know, just a lot of that, you know, that they help with, you know, your back and kind of keeping a straight spine. So it's really going to depend on you to try them out and to see if they work for you. But the reason why we recommend, especially as a solo hiker, was in addition to they could actually help you in a situation in case you did encounter a bear, etc. So we do like to recommend you have your trekking poles with you.
So someone asked a question about the hiking contact sheet that we've created. Yes, you could go ahead and leave that with someone that that cares about you, that will basically be in contact with the ranger if you're gone missing for a while. You could leave it in the bottom, like underneath the seat of the car. I don't know if it's really necessarily a good idea to broadcast that you're solo hiking or put it out there on your car dashboard, just because you know, things do happen. And so
Yeah.
again, I don't want to make it, you know, dismiss it and say, you know, that this will never happen. Of course, you know, things do happen. You know, I think more common of anything is maybe theft at the trail. And so if someone you know, really wants to, they're gonna break in and do that. But you know, you would have that same kind of situation again in the city as well. So you probably don't want to let people know that you're going to be gone for too long when it comes to that.
And especially as a solo hiker, that was one of our notes. Like, you know, definitely don't want to broadcast that you're out solo hiking, just as a safety precaution. I actually ran into Liz Thompson. She's a well-known hiker, and she was telling me that she actually posts after her hikes. So that's just a general tip around safety.
Yeah, you can also check in again with the ranger. You can also log in to their register as well. Sometimes they have an area where you can sign in and then also sign out as well. And that way they kind of know. Okay.
Yeah, we're just reading some of your quick questions before we get ready to chime out.
I don't know about pack goats. I haven't used them.
Someone asked about pack goats.
Yeah,
So,
I know goats are great for eating up some of the, you know,
yeah.
brush for fire, you know, so that way it doesn't catch on fire. I think it's really important. I'm not sure if we mentioned it before, but you know, when you're solo hiking, probably not a good idea to have music on. And in terms of like earbuds or something of that sort, I think it's really important that you pay attention to your surroundings. You really want to be much more aware of your surroundings when you're solo hiking. A lot different environment. I think it can be pretty nerve-wracking, but you know, you really want to pay attention to the area, making sure that you don't get lost, but also be aware of the people around you and protect and potential wildlife that's around you as well. But yes, so let's see. I see someone else said a lot of affirmations. Yes, I would definitely agree. And you can use positive affirmations in this. You know, I've got this. I am safe. I'm doing well. I am getting out in tune to the outdoors, and so I think that those are great things to also have. Okay.
So someone asked about resources for disabled hikers to get questions answered or additional advice. So disabled hikers, there is a new Instagram page. I don't have it in front of me right now, unfortunately, but I do know that there are some parks out there that have trails specifically for disabled hikers. I will say one off the top of my head, Mount Tam in Northern California. I think what I would do if I were in your situation, or if you knew someone who wanted to get outdoors and had a disability, I would absolutely start just doing some research online, and that will lead you to some form of community. But there is, I believe it's like disabled hikers on social media, so check them out. If someone knows the exact link to that resource, please let us know so we can share it now. But yes, there are trails for sure. And I definitely would check out your state local parks, as well as when you are visiting any of the national park units, you can go on and they definitely have little, they have little indications as to if these hikes are suitable. And I do know that there is work being done to make the trails accessible to more. So that could be a great piece that we could potentially write more content on in the future, just to provide more resources. And then we also have a question, I think, about snow here.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on it very quickly. So if you're going in an area where it's relatively level, I would recommend using microspikes. And microspikes, not the instep crampon, because and I'm using my hand to represent the foot, and as you step off, that's potential for slipping. And same thing when you put the heel down. If you just have the spikes in the instep part, you could also slip there, whereas the micro spikes would go around, and that could be attached to any boot, even a trail shoe. Now the next version up from there, and especially if you're doing anything that has any incline, you would want to use a crampon. And a crampon goes on; those are usually 10 or 12 points. Those usually go onto a boot, and the boot usually has a full shank. Full shank meaning it's rigid, and so you don't step out of the crampons. They do make some other. I don't want to get technical about all this stuff, but if you don't know what you're doing, you could easily step on yourself and hurt yourself. A lot of the times, the crampons will catch on, or even micro spikes will catch onto your clothing. So I usually use gaiters when I use that, and then gaiters protect me from the snow going inside the boot. Again, a whole nother topic, and we're actually going to talk about winter hiking in a future topic. So stay tuned on that one. But I just wanted to let you know, if you live in a place that's fully snowed in or a lot of snow, go on some level hiking areas.
You can also try snowshoeing. So if you haven't done that before, that is something you could potentially rent at your local retailer and try it out, see how you feel, but definitely staying level. Also wanted to, going back to the question on the disabled hikers, Granola Mom said on Facebook and IG, there is a group page called Disabled Hikers. So please look those up, and hopefully that they could provide a lot more resources. And thank you for bringing that to our awareness. So
there's a question here about cougars, mountain lions. Again, I want to reference you to that document. There are times where, again, when you go solo, your chances of becoming a prey might increase for that reason. That's not to say that doesn't happen, with groups, because it does. But again, I want to reference that document. I think in that situation, you do have to be prepared to fight. So again, I don't want to dismiss it and say it doesn't happen. Where we live in Southern California, there's an area called Whiting Ranch, and it's actually they've actually had some situations out there. So I just want to kind of let you know. Again, you're taking your chances. I always feel like when I'm driving to the trailhead, I'm taking more of a chance. I just feel like there's crazy drivers out there, and I'm probably going to get into an accident before I even get on the trail. So, it's one of those things out there, but we want you to be safe as possible. Yeah. Yeah. Someone made a mention if you're using crampons, probably an ice axe. Good idea. Again, you should definitely know how to use them. If you don't know how to use them, you can easily slip out of them. You think you have traction, you're going to fall. It's a bad situation. So there are classes on ice axe and crampons and snow travel course.
Yeah, next class we're hosting is next week on Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about winter hiking. It will be a shorter class, because we're just going to briefly touch on some things like what kind of clothing to bring, and then we're going to talk a little bit about like snowshoeing as an option. But feel free to join us next week on the same channels for some different classes that will happen at the same time at 5 p.m. And we hope that you guys come prepared to talk a little bit more about winter hiking then. We did receive an update on disabledhikers.com. Check them out. So there were some really great comments. We really appreciate that. Do we want to address anything else?
Yeah, I noticed someone said that they also use their trekking poles to, shoo away cobwebs and stuff like that. And if you've gone on a trail that's not very popular, that is going to happen. I know that's happened to me. I didn't have trekking poles, but I grabbed a stick and I was kind of using them like scissors and just kind of like, both hands, going up and down like this, and, just waving them in front of me. So there's going to be times where you might want to grab a stick and, just maybe that might make you feel a little bit safer, especially if you're going out hiking solo. Then, the stick is kind of a weapon if you don't have trekking poles. So really want you to, again, feel comfortable, feel safe. And, again, we're mainly out here to promote the physical and mental and spiritual benefits getting outdoors. You can't really get those if you're too afraid to go. And so we want to make sure that this is, informative, so that way you feel a little more comfortable about getting out there. All right, I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you all for joining us. And for anyone on Instagram, just a final reminder, this video will be available on our Facebook page. So if you missed any of the notes or the presentation, you can go on there and check it out. It was great being with you all today. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye. Bye-bye.